Save the date. The Nats Chat end-of-year podcast party will be Friday night, October 10th at Walters. Start time is TBD.
Now the pitch. Swinging and driving well to right field. Cruz going back. He's not going to get to it, and it is gone. Goodbye. Just clears the wall and into the Nationals bullpen. It is a grand slam for Brandon Lowe. His 28th home run of the year comes with 2 out here in the top of the second on a 1-ball, 2-strike pitch from Brad Lord. And now it's a big crooked number on the board for the Rays. 6 runs home here in the second. It's Tampa Bay 6 and Washington nothing. Lead at first for Cruz. And the pitch to Lyle on the way. Swing and a line drive into right center field. A base hit. Cruz will make the turn. He'll head for third. Lyle's trying for second. Here's the throw. The slide. He's safe. A double for Dalen Lyle. And the Nationals have runners on second and third with 1 out here in the bottom of the 9th inning.
Well, the Rays are going to challenge the call at second. That was a risky play.
After reviewing the call, the field's overturned. The runner is out. Tampa will retain.
Now, that's the nature of Lyle's game, but down by 3, that's a dagger to make it out of the bases like that.
And welcome to Nats Chat, along with MASNsports.com Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman, who was at Nationals Park. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. You know, most of the time you think about the months of June, July, and August, and happy thoughts come to mind, right? No school, vacation, warm weather. You get the idea. For the 2025 Nationals, the months of June, July, and August go down as a horror show. Sunday afternoon, a 7-4 loss to the Tampa Bay Rays at Nationals Park, completing a 3-game sweep. The Nats now have lost 8 consecutive games. We have yet another new low point for the Nats in MLB's 2025 regular season. 30 games below 500, 53 and 83. Worst record in the National League East, second worst record in the National League. The run differential down to minus 180, second worst run differential in the NL. And consider this, and this kind of gets forgotten, the Nats entered June 28 and 30. The season really wasn't that bad. And then it became so bad. The Nats over June, July, and August went 25 and 53. 53 losses in 78 games, to say nothing of the team on July 6th firing Mike Rizzo and Davey Martinez. Who knows what is going to happen in September, but so long and farewell to June, July, and August. You can find us on X at Nats_chat. You can find us on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast. You can email us, natschatpodcast@gmail.com. We have a website at which you can purchase a Nats Chat Podcast t-shirt. That website is natschatpodcast.com. And speaking of Nats Chat Podcast t-shirts, we got this email from Jim. Writes Jim, at this point, I think you guys should consider a I Survived 25 t-shirt. Of course, we'd have to be better in 26 for the t-shirt to work. Great pod season so far. Well, thank you very much for that, Jim. I tell you, Mark, I Survived 25. Such a t-shirt. I would wear that proudly. How about you?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I think back to, we probably could have done one of those in 21 and 22 for sure. The way those 2 seasons went, maybe didn't need it so much in 23 and 24. But the fact that we're talking in those terms about 2025 is both remarkable and awfully depressing, to be honest. I mean, I don't think anybody really thought that this would be the situation the Nationals would be in entering September of this season. Even if you were pessimistic going into this year, would you have thought that for the first time in Nationals history, they didn't win 10 games in any of the 3 summer months? June, July, August did not win 10 games in any one of those months. 7 wins in June, 9 wins in July, 9 wins in August. That's never happened. You said the record, 25 and 53 since June 1st. Extrapolate that out over a whole season. That's a 52-win pace, essentially over half of a season. If they want to avoid 100 losses, they have to go 10 and 15 the rest of the way. At this point, that feels far less likely to happen than it does feel like they would fail to win 10 games in September and end up with a 100-loss season. Survive 25? I don't even know if that's a strong enough word to explain what everyone has been through this year and how we will look back on this just wretched, depressing baseball season.
And regardless of what that loss total ends up being, I do think you can argue that this is the worst season for the Nats since the franchise came here, given the expectations, given the hopes, given where this team was supposed to be in terms of a rebuild. You know, it's one thing to be really bad in 07 and 08 and 09 and 2010. Things were a lot different back then. Now it's like this wasn't supposed to be the case. This season was never supposed to be like this. And at 28 and 30, you felt like this season wasn't going to be like this. You didn't know how good it might be. Okay, 28 and 30, of course, is not even a winning record, but that offered hope. And for the season to have collapsed like it has over June, July, and August, it's stunning. It really is jaw-dropping that it has unraveled like this to this degree over these 3 months. Like you said, and I very much believe it too, even if you are super pessimistic, glass half empty, etc., how could you have ever anticipated what we have seen over these last 3 months?
No, I don't think you could. And I think the key is, as you said, how they started. If you look back at their other 100-loss seasons, 2008, 2009, 2022, they got off to terrible starts in those years. And they were at the bottom of the barrel, and you knew it was going to be a long season all around. They have never had one like this, where there was some optimism there 2 months in. And even if you didn't think they could keep up that pace, and even if you didn't think, well, they're probably not going to hover around 500 for the whole season, you did think that they were going to have some kind of promise at the end, and that ultimately this would be in a better place than it was when the season began. It's impossible to say that this team and this franchise are going to be in a better place at the end of 2025 than they were at the start of it. You know, the only other comparable one is probably 2021, which was all about that great June and got everyone's hopes up again. They had a winning record, and then the bottom fell out in July. But even that, as hard as that was to experience, you kind of knew they were on borrowed time. It was sort of one last shot with that group that won the World Series. And you still had fresh in your mind that World Series title 2 years prior. That feels like ancient history right now. This is the year that was supposed to take this rebuild to the next step and say, okay, it's finally time to start winning and contending again. And instead, it's going to be a far worse season than the last two, with tons of questions about where they're really headed going into 2026.
And to add even more happy thoughts to our conversation right now, so we had the Nats on Saturday afternoon announcing having placed their ace, all-star starting pitcher Mackenzie Gore, on the 15-day injured list. And now we have this situation with Jarlin Susana. Jarlin Susana, per MLB Pipeline, is the Nats' number 2 pitching prospect and is the number 71 overall prospect in baseball. He left his start for AA-Harrisburg on Saturday evening due to what is being called right triceps soreness. Susana this past May was diagnosed with a grade 1 UCL sprain in his right elbow. As many of you listening know, each of these injuries can be a precursor to needing UCL surgery. That Susana now has had both of these injuries is very concerning. And of course, you hope like heck that he doesn't need a UCL surgery of some kind, including Tommy John surgery. But man, Susana in May, the grade 1 UCL sprain. Susana in late August, right triceps soreness. We have the Travis Sakura news fresh in our minds. August 20th, Travis Sakura, who per MLB Pipeline is the Nats' number 1 pitching prospect and is the number 46 overall prospect in baseball, underwent Tommy John surgery. What do you make of the latest here with Jarlin Susana? What do you think the team is thinking with Susana?
The biggest fear would be, if you remember what the initial diagnosis of Sakura was back in early July, right triceps soreness. Now, that doesn't guarantee that this is where it's headed. And in his case, they shut him down for a few weeks. They tried to get him throwing again. He was still feeling the pain. They went and gave him the MRI. They discovered the tear, and the rest is history. So you know there is a pattern there. Now, no two arms are the same. No two injuries are exactly the same. But when you combine that current diagnosis with the previous diagnosis of an actual sprain of the elbow ligament, and let's be clear for those who are not medical experts out there, I'm not claiming to be one, but a sprain is by definition a tear. It's a partial tear. Now, grade 1 is the smallest one, but he had that. They determined it wasn't severe enough to require surgery. Rehab, rest, came back, had actually pitched really well, is the shame of it all, over the last month or so since he came back from that. And now he's down again. You hope that it's nothing more than this and that it remains just a small, potentially partial sprain of the ligament. But you have to brace yourself for the possibility that we're going to find out here at some point that it is more severe than that and that he does need surgery. Now, I don't know their intentions as far as, I can't imagine at this point in the season they're going to try to have him throw again. But what you would hate to have happen is for them to shut him down for the winter. And then he comes to spring training and he starts to build up and says, ooh, my arm hurts again. And they give him the MRI then and say, oh, hey, you need Tommy John surgery. And now you've lost the 6 months between now and then. Now, I don't know exactly how this can work. You can't just preemptively give somebody Tommy John surgery if they don't actually have the tear. You're not going to do that. But I hope they have some method for determining here before the end of the season whether this is the path it's headed down or whether he truly is okay with rest and rehab and good to go for 2026. You cannot waste any more time. You cannot lose a whole season or more of him by delaying what may be an inevitable outcome. Again, we don't know that for sure. You hope it's not the case. You hope it's just soreness and that everything's going to be fine. But you have to, in the back of your mind, acknowledge that history suggests there's a chance this is much more severe than it sounds at the moment.
I mean, at this point, we have all seen this movie many times, and you hope for the best, yes, but nobody should be surprised if he ends up needing a UCL surgery of some kind. And good God, man, if this season ends up being not just what it has been on the field, but both Sikora and Susana end up needing UCL surgery. I mean, what are we talking about with this season? This is like the season from hell for this franchise. I can't get over how many bad things are happening here. So, we hope for the best for Jarlin Susana. That also does speak to this. When it comes to deciding on who is running baseball operations moving forward, there is going to be some urgency to get that rectified sooner rather than later once the season ends, because there are decisions that need to be made. And something like the Susana thing, maybe gets overlooked, maybe gets forgotten in a month, but that matters, right? Like, who's running your baseball ops? What is that person dictating to Susana in terms of his health? I wonder if maybe we do get some sort of resolution on the head of baseball operations front sooner than maybe we're thinking right now in terms of the season ends, and maybe within a week or so we get some sort of resolution.
You would hope it happens quickly. Now, obviously, if they decide that they're retaining Mike DiBartolo, that would be the fastest path towards a decision. Not saying that's necessarily the best way to go, because you do want to ideally talk to as many other people and interview other candidates for it. I don't know whether they are planning to or even allowed to start interviewing people before the season is over. Maybe there is a process for doing that. But if nothing else, you hope they've got all their ducks in a row so that the moment the season ends, they can get onto that process, do it quickly. Because, yes, you say that's important, but this also has to do with everything else in the front office. What other changes are they making? Is it in the entire baseball operations department? There are going to be a ton of moves to make. That can include the training staff sometimes and the medical staff. If somebody new, especially if it was somebody from the outside coming in, may want to overhaul all of those things. Well, that impacts everyone, like a Susana dealing with this. And then we haven't even gotten to the ultimate decision of the manager and the coaching staff. So there's a lot on their plate. You hope that they are prepared to jump right into that as soon as possible. You don't want to rush into a decision. You don't want to make the wrong decision, but you need to be ready to make some big decisions and get that going right away, because there's a lot to be done this offseason. And it doesn't just end when you name a GM. There are all sorts of dominoes that fall after that once you make that decision.
Well, one of the benefits of firing a head of baseball ops in season is that you as an organization can get a head start on the search. In other words, if the Nats had waited until the end of the season to fire Mike Rizzo, then they're not starting the search until then. The fact that Rizzo got fired all the way back on July 6th, nearly 2 months ago now, does offer an opportunity to get a head start on things. And what I've been wondering is, the Lerner ownership group, is it having meetings and conversations about where this thing is going? Is the group perhaps interviewing candidates for the head of baseball ops job? I know that might not be the most, morally correct thing to do with Mike DiBartolo as the interim GM guy, but the Nats, at the very least, could be interviewing people who aren't currently employed by MLB teams. I would think you have to get permission from teams to interview employees of those teams. But if someone isn't currently working for a team, you could interview that person right now. Is that happening? In other words, when the season ends, whatever the decision is, keeping DeBartolo or not keeping him, is this ownership group, 2, 3, 4 steps already into the race? Or is the ownership group slow walking this and not really acting in an aggressive, proactive fashion? And, might this take longer than it needs to take? I think that's a great unknown right now. What is happening behind the scenes? What is ownership doing or not doing when it comes to deciding on who's going to run this front office moving forward?
Yeah, we don't know. And I think it raises another interesting question, something I've been wondering myself as I start looking ahead to what the coverage of all this is going to be like after the season. Are they going to be open about this process, or are we just going to wait and one day the report gets out, they've hired so-and-so and they hold a press conference and that's that? Are we going to know who else they're interviewing along the way? Are they going to be public about it? And looking way ahead, when the day comes and they have a press conference, whether it's to reintroduce Mike DeBartolo or whether it's to introduce a brand new GM, is anybody from ownership going to be up there on the dais speaking about it, taking questions about it? That would be standard practice for a move of that kind of significance. And it hasn't happened here in an extremely long time. And we know how private Mark Lerner and his family have been when it comes to doing anything really in terms of public speaking. They put out printed statements every once in a while when things happen, such as after the firings. It's a huge question. I don't know the answer to that. Selfishly, I want them to be out there and as open as possible through the whole process. It helps me do my job, but hopefully it helps fans stay engaged and feel like they know what is going on and how invested they are in trying to address what's the most important hiring and move that they've made in a very, very long time. So there's a lot of unknown about how it's going to work and how much we're going to find out about how that process works.
Yeah, for sure. I also would say this, too. This is an opportunity to, at the very least, speak to a lot of smart people about what they think about your team. And so even if the intent is to keep Mike DeBartolo and promote him to being the permanent head of baseball ops, talk to people, talk to candidates, interview people, see what they think, get ideas, get fresh, different external perspectives on what you have going on. I think that's so important. That's not something you can do with any kind of regularity, right? Because how often are you searching for a head of baseball ops? The Nats are in that position now. And so I would be open to, even if an announcement doesn't come until a little while after we maybe wanted, if that's because you're talking to a lot of people and getting ideas, I think there's actually real benefit to that. So, I would hope that does end up happening. But we don't know. There's so much about this. We don't know. A DeBartolo announcement could come in season. A DeBartolo announcement could come 3 weeks after the end of the season. We just don't know what this ownership group is thinking and where this thing is going to end up landing. Hey, a great supporter of the Nats Chat podcast for years now has been Window Nation. If you want new windows, if you need new windows, contact Window Nation. Tell Window Nation that Al Galdi from the Nats Chat podcast sent you. That helps out this podcast a lot, and that gets you a great deal on great Window Nation windows. In fact, now is the best time of year to get new windows. Whether you have old, drafty windows or cheap builder-grade windows, September is the perfect month to protect your home from cooler weather. And right now, Window Nation is offering its most popular offer: buy 2 replacement windows, get 2 for free. Plus, you won't pay any interest, pay any monthly payments, or pay any down payment for 2 years. 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com and tell Window Nation that you want the deal that you heard about from Al Galdi on the Nats Chat podcast. With Window Nation, you get top quality windows from a trusted company, all at a reasonable price, because Window Nation knows that replacing windows is an investment, and Window Nation wants to make the investment affordable to you. And do not miss this great offer from Window Nation. For listeners of the Nats Chat podcast, the offer is good until September 30th. Buy 2 windows, get 2 free, and you pay nothing for 2 years. 866-90-NATION or windownation.com. That's 866-90-NATION or windownation.com. And tell Window Nation that Al Galdi from the Nats Chat podcast sent you.
For those interested in learning a new language, whether it be Spanish, French, or something else, check out Babbel. Babbel's 10-minute lessons are quick and handcrafted by over 200 language experts, ready to get you talking about your new language in just 3 weeks. Because talking is the key to really knowing any language. Designed by real people for having real conversations, Babbel gets you talking. With over 16 million subscriptions sold, Babbel's 14 award-winning language courses are backed by a 20-day money-back guarantee, so no pressure. Here's a special limited-time deal for our listeners right now. Get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for Nats Chat listeners at babbel.com/natschat. Get up to 60% off babbel.com/natschat. Spelled BABBEL.com/natschat. Rules and restrictions may apply.
First pitch. House lines one shallow left. That's falling. That's going to be a base hit. Chaparro scores. Cruz right behind him. The throw home is offline. It gets by the catcher to the backstop. And so House will go to second. Seymour has to track it down along the first base line as House will hold at second. 2-run single for Brady House. It's now 7-4 Rays. And House takes second on a throwing error by the left fielder.
All right, when it comes to this game on Sunday afternoon, so a 7-4 loss to the Rays at Nationals Park. A sweep is complete. The losing streak gets to 8. The Nats in this game, 4 runs, 7 hits, just 2 walks, just 1 for 8 with runners in scoring position, 16 strikeouts, the 7 hits, a double, and 6 singles. The offense has been so bad during this 8-game losing streak. 20 runs the Nats have totaled over the 8 games. But man, 16 strikeouts in a game like that. We've talked so often about the Nats' approach to plate appearances. 16 strikeouts says quite a bit about the approaches that were on display.
A lot of chasing, a lot of strikeouts when you have opportunities to try to create a rally and make things happen. Nothing productive about striking out. You know, we've talked often about how the strikeout doesn't have the same stigma anymore as it used to, but it's still completely unproductive at bat. There are ways to make outs, but still do something that makes a difference and helps your team in some way. And so when you strike out 16 times, it's hard to say that that was a good offensive approach at all. They had one little thing going there in the 4th inning. It was nice to see that, but they have to be able to do it over more than 1 inning. Again, I mean, the 4th inning, that's actually early by their standards. Usually doesn't happen until the 7th, 8th, or 9th. They're really not doing it in the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd innings, which continues to be a problem. Every single game during this losing streak, 8-game losing streak, they've trailed the entire time. There's, I guess you call it a half an inning. They were up 1-0 on the Yankees in one of those games. I think they scored in the top of the 3rd, and they gave up 3 runs in the bottom of the 3rd. So they have not ended a single inning over the last 8 games holding a lead. That's a hard way to play baseball. And yes, some of that is the starting pitching, digging them into a hole, but it also speaks to the offense not jumping out and doing anything against opposing starters and waiting until you're already trailing to try to get anything going.
We talk about June, July, and August and all the things that have gone wrong. We've seen James Wood cool off. We've seen C.J. Abrams cool off. And we've seen nobody else emerge. You know, Josh Bell had his nice little run, but that really has dissipated. And it's amazing. Like, no one is hot. There hasn't been any Nat who you could say has been hot in so long now, it feels like. Like, just nobody has really been going in a really good, impressive way for weeks now. You know, some guys are doing okay, but man, usually with a baseball team, at various points in a season, you have different guys who are hot. Like, that's how a season goes. This team, over the last few months, you really have not had that. It's remarkable. Wood in this game as the Nats starting DH and number 1 batter, 0 for 3 with a walk and 3 strikeouts. Abrams as the Nats starting shortstop and number 2 batter, 0 for 4, 2 strikeouts, committed a throwing error. We did have Brady House in this game. That was nice. He is the Nats starting 3rd baseman and number 8 batter, 2 for 4 with a 2-run single and another single. But he committed a throwing error. And this is the offense right now. You know, you're begging for singles. You're begging for rallies. The home runs, we've talked about this, have dried up. The Nats got murdered in terms of home runs in the series against the Yankees. This series, the Rays were hitting homers at a very nice clip from their perspective. The Nats not hitting homers. And, you know, we've talked about not just Brady House, but also Dylan Cruz. And like, do those guys get going as this season goes on? Can those guys end their seasons in positive ways to provide some encouragement for 2026? You know, we're still waiting. I mean, we see some good things here and there, but, you know, the notion of like Cruz getting hot, It's not happening right now. Brady House getting hot, not happening right now, even though he had a pretty good game on Sunday afternoon. So I still think this is something that if you're a Nats fan, you're begging for. Cruz and House especially to get on a roll that's not in effect, at least not yet.
Yeah, I feel like Cruz had a couple of games there that were looking pretty good. Same for Dalen Lyle, had a couple of really clutch hits for them late in games, but that has not been sustained really at all. And House, well, he'd have to actually play to get on any kind of hot streak. So we got to wait for that to happen first. I mean, he was at one point here 3 for 3 in the series. In fact, he only taken 3 at-bats through 2.5 games, says a lot there. But he did ground into a killer double play in the 7th inning and then struck out for the final out of the game with a runner in scoring position. So he has not shown a whole lot himself. You're right. I think what's probably most jarring is that there isn't a single hitter on this team that you say, okay, that's the guy who right now is leading the way. That guy that you say, okay, he's going to hit third for us because he's on a hot streak. I mean, it's kind of Riley Adams, and even he hasn't done much here over the last several days. There was a brief stretch where he was kind of hot, so I said, okay, let's make him the 3 or 4 hitter. It's not happening with him. It's not happening with anybody. They've got a month to go, and I know for a lot of these young players, this is the first time they've been through this, both losing to this extent, playing out the string of a 162-game season. There's still 25 games. It's a 6th of the season left to go. I hope, whatever it is that it takes, I hope they have found the motivation, both physically and mentally, to get through this and find a way to do something positive. And whatever you need to motivate yourself to go the rest of the way, do it, because there's still too much baseball left in both good and bad ways. There are opportunities to end this on a high note and feel like you've done something good for yourself moving forward. And there, unfortunately, are also too many opportunities left to let it fall apart. And all of a sudden, a season that may have looked good in June or July could look really bad in the end. They've got to personally dig deep and figure out how they do that over these final 25 games. Even if it has nothing to do with how the team performs, you have to do it on an individual level because they're all playing for something right now.
Yeah, and I would say other than James Wood and C.J. Abrams, and even with them, there is perhaps some debate. Everyone on this team has something to prove. So like the idea of, I can take this next month off, or I can coast, or I can not try my best. You're not established enough to have that attitude. Like all of these guys should be employing the philosophy of, I got to go out there and do my best because I don't know what the future holds with management for this team. I want to impress. I want to showcase myself. And, if you're a young guy who's looked as having a lot of talent, you say, I want to really have a good career here. And even though this team this season isn't good, that doesn't mean that I can't be a piece of good Nats teams in the future. So I would hope at the very least they're looking at it from that perspective. I think it's a weird deal too, because a lot of times you'll say, well, motivation can come from the coaching staff. But this coaching staff, I mean, they're human beings, right? They see the writing on the wall, and the writing could not be any larger nor any clearer. Like, you're all almost certainly going to be gone come the end of this season. Maybe 1 or 2 guys are retained, but even that might be far-fetched. So I don't know. I mean, is this coaching staff fully engaged to where it would be properly motivating young players right now? I wonder about that.
Yeah, it's actually absolutely valid to raise that question. And this is really why the decisions, when they made them, I understand why they made them, and I'm not saying it was wrong to make the decisions to fire Mike Rizzo and Davey Martinez. But what it did, especially when you were keeping the rest of the coaching staff and essentially saying, no, they're going to be here the rest of the year, is it created this lame duck situation that everybody knows what they're in. And you're acknowledging on July 6th, okay, this season's over, we're playing out the string. That's a long way to go. It's a lot of baseball to try to find some motivation. It's hard to do. And, the players, at least in most of their cases, should know, okay, I need to play well because I'm trying to make sure I'm back here next year. If you're a coach, how much can you do to save your job at this point? There's probably very little to anything you can do. And that doesn't excuse if they've mentally checked out. And, I see them working every day. I don't think they've, given up on their jobs or anything like that. But deep down, they have to know, Miguel Cairo has to know what he's working with here. Whatever they have to do to summon it up themselves, take some pride in trying to help a Dylan Cruz and a Brady House become better players and make sure they have good careers. That's what you have to do. You have to take some pride in the job. But you can understand why they certainly don't feel it right now, and probably haven't felt it for several months, because the writing was already on the wall in early July how this was going to go.
Lord comes set. Kicks, delivers. And the fastball high and away, ball 4. Back-to-back walks. That delivers a run. Williams gets his 6th RBI of the year as Bob Seymour comes in from third to score. The runners move up. Pereira to third. And Tristan Gray to second. Rays with 2 runs home here in the second. It's Tampa Bay 2 and Washington nothing with a bases loaded walk.
The Nats starting pitcher for this 7-4 loss to the Rays on Sunday afternoon was Brad Lord, and all of a sudden he's struggling. He struggled for a 3rd consecutive start. He allowed 7 runs in 3 innings. He gave up 5 hits, which were a grand slam, a triple, a double, and 2 singles. He issued 2 walks. He recorded 3 strikeouts. He threw 62 pitches, 36 strikes, 26 balls. Lord, in the top of the second, allowed 6 runs, including giving up a 2-out grand slam by University of Maryland product Brandon Lowe to right field on a 1-2 pitch for a 6-0 Rays lead. And just like that, Brad Lord, over his last 3 starts, has seen his ERA for this regular season go from 3.26 to 4.34. He was having such a nice season. He still could end up having a nice season. It's not like his season is completely ruined here, but it's been concerning. These last 2 starts especially, these have been like blow-up outings from Brad Lord, and it kind of feels like maybe the carriage is morphing back into a pumpkin for Brad Lord. We'll see.
You know, he really had done such a nice job all year of avoiding any kind of blow-up big inning and maybe give up a couple of runs here and there, but did not let it ever snowball the way that it has in these last 2 starts against the Yankees and now the Rays. And when you look at this one, it's back-to-back walks of the 8 and 9 hitters. The 9 hitter on 4 pitches with the bases loaded to force in a run. That tells you a lot right there. And then needing 1 more pitch to get out of it, at least with a little bit, minimal damage, only 2 runs scored, he hangs a slider to Brandon Lowe, and that's a grand slam. And so that's what you have to learn how to do. If it starts going down, first of all, don't let it get to that point. Don't walk the 8-9 hitters, make them beat you. But once you don't get them out, you got to dig deep and find a way to execute pitches. One mistake can kill you against big league hitters, as we saw in this case. What you also saw was an inning later, there's a leadoff triple. And then Miguel Cairo walks to the mound, and everybody's looking for the signal to the bullpen, and he didn't. He went out there with a message. He never intended to take him out of the game, and he said, use your fastball more. You have a good fastball. It's deceptive. Stop throwing your other stuff. Go after them with your fastball. Turned around and walked back. Well, it's only 3 batters, but he got the next 3 batters out, and then that was the end of his day. So hopefully he got the message and will apply that in his next start and over the final month of the season. Maybe was trying to be a little too fine with his breaking stuff, instead of acknowledging best pitch in baseball is a well-located fastball.
Well, a bright spot for the Nats, and it's nice that we have at least something positive to discuss here. The bullpen. The Nats bullpen right now is on fire. 5 Nats relievers on Sunday afternoon combined for 6 scoreless innings, concluding a series in which Nats relievers combined to allow 1 run in 11 2/3 innings. P.J. Poulin tossed 2 scoreless innings. Clayton Beeter tossed a perfect top of the 6th with 2 swinging strikeouts. Shinosuke Ogasawara tossed a perfect top of the 7th with 2 swinging strikeouts. Jose A. Ferrer tossed a perfect top of the 8th. And Orlando Rebolta tossed a scoreless, hitless, and walkless top of the 9th with 2 swinging strikeouts. The only blemish for him during his time in the game was that throwing error by C.J. Abrams. Nats Media Relations on Sunday morning put this out on X. The Nats bullpen leads Major League Baseball in opponents' batting average since August 20th, 152. Also leads the National League with a 2.37 ERA in those 10 games. This bullpen has been a real bright spot. It's a shame the offense has been so bad lately. It's a shame the starting pitching has been so bad lately. The bullpen has been very good lately, like actually really good, quantifiably really good. And I give these guys a lot of credit.
Yeah, the only shame of it is that these haven't been high leverage spots, so we don't really know how they would perform if it was a tight game. Instead, they've been trailing by multiple runs all the time. Now, you got to start somewhere, so at least they are headed on the right track. And just over the last 2 games alone, it's 9 scoreless innings with 1 hit, no walks, and 10 strikeouts. Yes, 10 strikeouts in 9 innings. How much have we talked about, lamented, how the Nats bullpen was not swing and miss stuff, that they don't have the guys who record the strikeouts as so many other bullpens have. Well, here you go. More strikeouts than innings pitched over the last 2 days while putting up zeros and not walking anybody. That's fantastic. What I would love to see, and maybe it'll happen here in the upcoming Marlins series, can they do it in higher leverage spots? If they can, you may actually have something going The problem is they keep losing every game and they trail early every day. And so it's hard to really evaluate this and say, yes, they've turned a corner, or yes, there are some real legitimate pieces here, because as we know, low leverage relief appearances are very different than high leverage ones.
They are. I will say this, though. The bullpen has been going well for a few weeks now. And so when you accumulate that many innings, I think you can say, well, the sample size is large enough to where there's something there, you would like to see more high leverage spots. But man, this is over multiple series now that this bullpen has been a lot better. So it's been good to see. And hopefully the bullpen work continues to be good. And maybe perhaps in some Nationals wins. We'll see. Next up for the Nats is a 3-game series against the Miami Marlins at Nationals Park. Game 1 Monday afternoon at 1:05. Andrew Alvarez will be the Nats starting pitcher. Interim manager Miguel Cairo made that official prior to the game. Game 2 Tuesday evening at 6:45. Cade Cavalli will be the Nats starting pitcher. Game 3 Wednesday afternoon at 1:05. Mitchell Parker will be the Nats starting pitcher. We talked about Alvarez on the last installment of the podcast. Certainly not a highly regarded prospect, but a guy who has been pitching well lately. And so we shall see what goes down on Labor Day afternoon at Nationals Park.
Yeah, we'll see. Go for it. Now, he's not really a kid. He's 26 years old. 12th round pick in 2021, organizational pitcher of the year in 2023. And though his numbers this year overall haven't been great, his last 6 starts have been good, and yet another example of more strikeouts than innings pitched. That's a nice thing to see from him. He's going to make at least a few starts, you would think. I don't know that he's penciled in for the rest of the season. It's going to depend on how Mackenzie Gore does and whether they try to get him back or not. And in theory, if Josiah Gray or somebody else maybe is ready to come back before season's end, we'll see. But here's an opportunity. Go get him. It's the Marlins. I know they've owned the Nationals, surprisingly, this season. But you'd think if you're going to put a guy into a semi-advantageous situation, maybe this is one where he can have some success. Get through the first inning, survive that one. Maybe he can give them a chance. How about scoring him some runs? Give him some run support early on, take some pressure off of the 26-year-old rookie and see where it goes. But, I think a lot of times we gloss over this stuff because we say, well, he's not a top 30 prospect and, may not have a big future here. This is the biggest moment of this kid's life. And for his family, it's the biggest moment they're ever going to have, with him. You hope he can channel it all and do well and come out of it feeling good. But either way, this is a major occasion for a young man who's been waiting to do this for quite a while. He didn't take the quick and easy path to the big leagues. He worked his way up to get there. Good luck to him. Let's see how it goes.
Well, the opportunity is there. If he shows any sort of aptitude for this, he'll get another opportunity and he will deserve it. The Nats right now need all the help they can get. So good luck to Andrew Alvarez. Hit us up on X at Nats_chat. Hit us up on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast. We offer shout outs on the Nats Chat Podcast. If you would like for us to deliver a shout out to someone who you care about, contact the man who runs this podcast, Tim Shover. See what goes into the shout out. The email address, natschatpodcast@gmail.com. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. We thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast.
Add another Cal Poly Mustang to the MLB draft list. Andrew Alvarez was selected by the Washington Nationals in the 12th round of the draft this afternoon. The redshirt senior was the 353rd pick and becomes the second Mustang selected in this year's draft. A total of 74 Cal Poly players coached by Larry Lee in 19 seasons have signed professional baseball contracts. Congratulations to Andrew. We'll be rooting for you on the West Coast.